Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Mindful Metal Jacket. I'm going to try to really soothe you with my voice. Are you out there? Are you listening? Relax. Close your eyes. Take a moment to breathe in and recognize that you're still alive, and so am I. Although I'm pre-recording this, so I might be dead. But if you're hearing this, you're alive. Isn't that funny? There's a chance I'm dead, but you're 100% alive. Like while I'm saying this, I could be dead by the time you're hearing it, but you can't be because you're hearing it. That's interesting. Anyways, welcome back to the show, Mindful Metal Jacket. I am your host and I am your friend, comedian Joe List. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening, go to YouTube, subscribe to my channel. I got a new special coming out. Maybe it's out already. I don't know. I don't even know what day it is anymore. I'm happy you're here. I know this. It's a special day, whatever day you're hearing this, because today I have one of my best friends in the wide world, Lindsay Adams, comedian, baker, friend, host of the Snack Time podcast. You're going to love her if you don't already know her. You should. If you've seen me in LA at the Hollywood Improv, you've seen Lindsay. She's been there with me both times. I've headlined that room. And she also happens to have the same name as the wife of my producer, Alex Adams. Lindsay Adams. Different Lindsay Adams. How many Lindsay Adams do you think there are in the world or in America? Wouldn't you say most of the Lindsay Adams in the world are in America? Let's focus, everybody. Here's another episode. This was recorded 58 years ago. The audio might be weird. It's on Zoom, but this is the last episode ever of Mindful Metal Jacket recorded over Zoom. I don't want to say ever, whatever, but we're trying to do in studio. Anyways, happy to have Lindsay on. She's one of my great, great friends. We met during the pandemic, and we had a lot in common, obviously, as you'll hear. We go deep. We talk about parents, upbringing. We talk about alcoholism. We talk about Lindsay's been sober a long, long time. We get into her teenage years. There's some wild stories, some funny stories. And I haven't re-listened to this in a while, so I don't know every detail of everything we talked about, but I love talking to Lindsay, one of my favorite people to hang out with and talk to. She's absolutely hilarious. And again, just was really open and willing to get in there and talk about all these really real feelings. And I think it's going to be a very beneficial episode to a lot of people. I think you'll get a lot out of it. I think you'll really enjoy it. And I hope you love her as much as I do. And check her out. I think it's, I don't know, I follow her on Instagram, obviously. Lindsay is Popular, I believe, is her handle. She's got a podcast called Snack Time Podcast. I've been on. Sarah's been on. We did an episode of You Know What Dude together. And she's just absolutely hilarious and sweet and fun and a good friend. And I hope you love her as much as I do. I think you will. Enjoy this episode with my friend and your new friend, Lindsay Adams. Are you someone that reads comments and stuff? Do you get negative stuff? Because I get it, and it just makes me want to just not kill myself. It makes me want to kill the person.
You know, no one really knows who I am, so I don't really get negative comments. I mean, I don't get a ton. Like every now and then, there's some wiener that pops in and it's like whatever, and or it says something stupid, but I'm more likely to get in on other people's negative comments, like my friends. I'll be the one to like jump in and be like, fuck you. You don't know what you're talking about. I'll obviously read the positive. I don't think I get really negative stuff just because people don't care. They're like, who the fuck is it? Who cares?
Right. Yeah. I'll engage sometimes, and I shouldn't but it's ego. And what drives me crazy is not people saying you suck. It's when people are like, you said this, and I'm like, but that's not what I said. There's nothing that makes me crazier than being like, no, I didn't. You're misunderstanding.
Yeah, I mean, it's people's perception that I think will always be the thing that gets under my skin, like interpreting who I am as a person in an incorrect way versus like I think I would rather someone be like, I just don't like you
Right.
because I don't love that, but I it's like at least you're not picking me apart.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I have a deep desire to be right or understood.
Oh my God, yes. Understood. That is so fucking key.
Like you'll say something and then someone's like, oh, this completely misinterprets it, and I'm like, no, that's not at all what I'm saying. Exactly what you're saying. I'm like, that's not who I am. I'm not that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I also I think like it's hard for me to grasp the idea that even if someone I think if someone misinterprets something that I'm saying as negative, that then they think I'm a bad person. And for some reason that matters to me. And the truth is, like, sometimes people, even if they misinterpret, even if you say stupid shit, it doesn't make you a bad person. So,
Agreed.
like, I get so worked up about it because I'm just like, I want them to get it. I want them to understand. And it kind of doesn't matter.
Yeah. What is, I mean, this is what I talk about in therapy constantly, is that my therapist is like, why can't you just understand that you are a good person? And when he said, he'll be like, you're a good person, I'm like, thank you, that really means a lot to me. And he's like, well, I'm not. He's like, that's just the truth. I'm not trying to make you feel better. And he's like,
Yeah.
why can't you accept that? I guess it's our parents or something.
I don't know. I think it's like, honestly, the morality thing, I think is ego for me. Like, what if I'm a bad person? Is that terrible?
Right.
There's lots of bad people.
But you're
I mean,
not a
it's,
bad
I,
person.
well, and thank you so much. Honestly, that was bait and you took it.
I mean, maybe you're a bad person. I don't know.
No, but I guess like I've like had to learn how to like examine the worst case scenario anytime I have like a fear of something being true. Does that make sense?
Wait, say it again.
Like like for example, if I'm scared that I offended someone, but I'll never be able to find out if I offended them for whatever reason, I have to like instead of obsessing about figuring out how to convince them that I didn't offend them or like finding out, I have to like that just sit and be like, well, okay, what if you did offend them? Is that the worst thing in the world? Like
Right.
what? So just examining what if like worst case scenario was true.
Yeah. Okay. So that's very helpful. And that's an exercise I try to do all the time. That's another thing my therapist always says is accepting your worst fear. And he'll
Mm,
say, he's like, maybe you're not special. Maybe you're not a great person. And I'm like, but I did these things. Look at this thing I did. And he's like, but maybe that doesn't even matter. What if your parents are never going to acknowledge something or
mm,
whatever it is? Or, yeah, he's like, maybe tons of people do hate you. So what's so bad about that?
yeah. That I mean, that's fucking hard though. Do your parents not acknowledge your accomplishments? Is that part of
They,
it?
I think, so. I mean, it's hard because they come to, when I do shows in Boston, they come and they laugh. They enjoy the shows. They always come, but they're never, my parents have never been like, we are like blown away. We just can't
Mm,
believe you did it. It's so impressive. You wanted to be a comedian. You did it. You accomplished a lot. Like my last two late nights I did, I had to contact my mother. Like it was like 5 days passed. And finally I called and was like, hey. And she's like, yeah,
after
we
it
didn't want to
aired.
bother you. Yeah. Like I was like, yeah, I didn't hear from you. I was on TV. Like, did
Hey,
you
I did
like
this
it?
thing that everybody wants. It's like a real milestone.
Yeah, and they just kind of didn't. But I think it's a lot of it is more just I feel like social discomfort than anything
Mm,
else. I don't know. Maybe I'm making excuses from that. That's what my therapist always says.
that you make excuses for your parents.
Yeah, because my biggest fear is like offending or hurting my parents' feelings.
Oh yeah, I do that with my mom. I mean, my dad's dead, so that's over with, but I didn't really protect his feelings. I feel like I'm my mom's savior because my dad was an alcoholic and he was fine. He wasn't like a bad guy. He just was like one of those boomers that like was like becoming a dad seems cool, even though my parents were trash. Like,
Right, right.
and then they're like, whoa, this is intense. Like, gotta do something. But I always wanted to protect my mom. Even now, my mom will do something that my therapist is like, no, 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 that's not on you. And I'm like, don't fucking say a word about my mom.
Yeah, that's it's very hard to get over. And now I'm reading this book. Sorry, I'm all over the place. I'm not a journalist, so my brain just goes everywhere.
You're not. Okay, understood. No, I don't care. I truly just, I have brain fog. I'll forget what I'm saying and say something stupid. I promise.
But so where do you land in this area? I'm going to throw a bunch of things at you. So you're in
Good.
therapy now.
Yes.
Yes. So do you? I keep wheeling away in this chair. It's killing me.
Yeah, please. See you later.
But so my therapist is a therapist that I think a lot of therapists are like it's your parents, confront your parents. Like you should go confront them on these things. But now, which I've been in therapy for years, trying to do that, and it's hard. And I come back and I'm like, I couldn't. And I actually wrote a movie about it. And then, but now I'm reading this book called "It Didn't Start with You." Have you ever heard of this book?
No.
It's great, and I recommend. I thought it was here, but it's not here. Someone named Mark something wrote it, but it's all about how a lot of our trauma or whatever comes from past trauma, even 2 generations ago. It could be our grandparents. Something happened in their family, and your parents are just giving you what they're doing their best, and you should have empathy for them. And that's how you actually heal, is having deep empathy for these places, which is kind of like the opposite of what my therapist has been saying, is like, stop protecting them. And I'm like, I don't know which is correct. Thoughts? I'm volleying that back to you.
No, I love that. I think that because I've had to go through my own process with like figuring out how to process the generational trauma. And I think you have to stop protecting them first in order to get that empathy.
Right.
Like I stayed really mad at my dad for years. And it was undeniable. Like pretending like I was mad at like he was like on his deathbed. Like he was dying. And I was like, like, so like, I feel like, but I had to be there in order to gain that empathy. And like, if I was just honest and I was like, yeah, I'm fucking furious. And then I could like look into his history, which was that like he was literally given no tools to be a person. He was just like handed alcoholism and being called a pussy by his dad all the time.
Right. And how old were you when your dad passed?
I was 21. It was right as I was graduating college. So it's been like over 10 years.
And you're a sober person now. Were you still drinking then when your dad passed?
No, I wasn't. I was sober. Part of the drama was that I was like the scapegoat for most of my childhood. And he was causing damage during that time. But my mom is also like she's like super Al-Anon in terms of just like really just like unconditional love to a fault. And so once I got sober and I wasn't the problem, he like wilded out and then like was mad because I was sober.
Right. And how old was he when he passed?
He was 60.
Wow. And did he 61. Die of alcoholism?
No, he died from cancer. But he like was spiraling out like right before he got diagnosed with cancer. My mom was like done. Like he had gone to rehab. He had like been going to AA, like, and it just wasn't, he just was like, he just his ego was too big. Right. And So he was spiraling out anyway. And then he got diagnosed and he was like, I'll take this year to make things better. And then like he still fucked off. So like it was just like, yeah, he just couldn't get it together. Like he just didn't have the capacity.
Right.
Which was infuriating to watch and also made me the one like holding the bag because I was like, you're being a fucking asshole. And everyone was like, this man is bald from chemo. It's like
Right. Yeah. It's God. The parental stuff is so difficult, but that's the thing. It's like, so have you gotten to a place now where you look back and you're like, oh, but he was like, I mean, you kind of alluded to it earlier. Like he was just dealing with what he was given.
yeah, now there's enough space there because I'm not suffering consequences from his behavior. And I haven't been for years. So I've had time to heal and have that empathy. And that's the thing. I think you have to like heal before you can have that empathy.
Right.
Like, and I guess it goes hand in hand, but like, at the time, I was like, I don't give a fuck how you were raised. I don't give a shit. I like, this is what's happening now. And now I'm just like, yeah, I mean, this poor guy, like, he really just, he made poor choices, but he also was like, he's doing what he thought he could. Like, he loved me. You know what I mean? That's the thing
Right.
with parents that's so hard is like, I don't know what it's like with yours, but like, I know my dad loved me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, you do. Yes. It is hard because you have to pick up like their love language or whatever. Like I'm like, my dad
Yeah.
seems happy to see me when I come there and he laughs. When I make jokes, he's laughing. And then my mother will be like, yeah, dad said this. So I kind of get it through. I think there's a weird thing with generations. I think my wife's mother is like that too, is like people, they only say nice things about you when you're not around. They don't know how to say it directly to you, which I guess is a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was just talking about this the other day with my husband, actually. And like, I have a friend who tells me that I talk like I'm terminal because I try to go out of my way to tell people when I hear nice things about them or when I want to express appreciation, like basically like acting like I'm on my deathbed at all
Yeah,
times.
I
So I
love that.
tend to be like a very I tend to like send random notes to friends where I'm just like, you're really important to me. And it's
Yeah, I do the same thing.
do you really?
Yeah.
Is that why you do it? Because you feel like that's something that is important?
Yeah, well, I feel like that's what I want to hear. And I also think
Yeah.
it is valuable. Like if you're thinking of someone, you should reach out to them. So I try to do
Yeah.
that a lot. And like I was just sharing this a few minutes ago that like I text like 20 to 25 people a day just because I like to be in touch with people. And you think of someone, you go, oh, hey, I was just watching that movie. Remember that time we did that? That was great.
Yeah.
And to me, it's nice. It makes me feel good. And I do have that thing. And this is a big part of like stoicism. You sort of negative visualization. You sort
Yeah.
of sit and imagine that like, imagine if you just woke up and your husband was laying dead next to you. I mean, you don't ruminate on it, but you spend it for a couple minutes. So it's nice to go, hey, I love you. You're
Yeah.
great. So I try to do that as much as I can. But yeah, I guess it's unusual because people are like, oh, thanks. Are you all right? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I get that a lot, especially like I have certain friends, I'll do it and then they'll just call and be like, is everything okay? And I'm like, no, everything's great. I was thinking about how much I like you.
I love that you do that though. I think that's great. I don't know a ton of people that do, but I also do the same thing. I text so many people a day. My husband is like, how many people are you texting? And I'm just like, I I don't know. I don't know when, and maybe it's also sometimes I think it's also like a validation thing,
Right.
like wanting to feel like I have a lot of friends, even though legitimately I do. There's a lot of like really incredible people in my life.
I used to do a thing where before I would go do a show, like a weekend where I was doing a long set, I would text a bunch of people just because I put my phone in airplane mode for the show, just so when I come off
Yeah.
stage, I have a bunch of texts. You're like,
Oh,
hey, all right. It's like,
that's actually great and diabolical. It's just
well, you get
honestly,
some,
that's some validation when you get off stage if there's nobody there to be like, good set.
yeah, you get some dopamines of like, hey, what's going on? And then you're like, oh, all right, people like me. But I don't know. Also, it's like I want to try to be better about calling people because text does not do the same because you can't really hear tone and get as much. Like I've exchanged really nice texts with people, and you don't feel like whatever it is, dopamine or serotonin, because it doesn't read as well. It's much better to call. But I also at the same time had this fear of not commitment. What's the other, like obligation of being stuck on the phone? That's like a big fear of mine too. So that's why I like text.
I agree with you 100%. I actually prefer no phone calls. They feel, unless I know it's a friend that I can be like, I gotta go and I don't have to make something up. But like getting a call gives me anxiety. Getting a FaceTime. I have friends that like
Oof.
will just FaceTime out of the blue, which is assault.
That's completely insane. No, I think that's actually completely insane.
Yeah, it's like it's offensive. And I agree. I think calling is good, but I don't know. I just like if someone calls me, I have friends now, like some of my closest friends will text me beforehand and be like, "Do you have time to talk? Like, can I just call you real quick?" And I prefer that
Yeah.
to an out of the blue phone call.
Yeah. Well, I haven't, I just assume an out of the blue phone call, somebody's dying. Like I answer the phone,
Yeah.
like, hello. And they're like, hey.
Yeah.
But some
Yeah.
people
No,
just
I'm
won't
furious.
text. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. Some people are like, I'm not really good at texting. And I'm like, well, fucking get better at it. That's not my problem.
Right. Um, I don't know how we ended up here, but I agree. But somewhere we started talking about, so the family thing, but going back to the parents thing, I do think it is important first to acknowledge that like a lot of what I'm dealing with or whatever you're dealing with, depression, anxiety, or stress, that you figure out where it came from your
Yeah.
family. Because my therapist is a big believer in it's learned behavior, that you got it from
Interesting.
somewhere. Now, do you not feel the same way?
No, I feel like it's a combination because I'm medicated.
Mhm.
So, and I've been medicated for a while and I know it's like I respect everybody's opinion on it. I don't give a shit. But I guess for me, like in some of the experiences I've had with anxiety and depression, it really has felt chemical.
Right.
And so I think, and I don't know, I'm not a fucking doctor, so I have no idea if I'm going to say this and it's completely wrong and people can go nuts. But like, I think mental illness is genetic too. I'm just going to say it's genetic so I can blame my mom. But like, yeah, I think it's like in you potentially, but I think the behaviors around it, like you're talking about, are learned.
Yeah, it's hard because sometimes I don't know which is which because I'm reading this book again and it's talking about how like when you're in the womb, if your mother is super stressed or depressed or anxious, you're getting that, like whatever chemical is feeding it. So it's like you can just kind of imagine like a fetus get in a place that's like, oh God, shit, are we all right? Like, you know what I mean? Or whatever it is, whatever
Yeah.
stress it is, it's got to be getting into the person the same way, whatever DNA, whatever the person eats or drinks. And then once you're born, again, you're picking up that vibe of whether it be depression or anxiety or stress or fear. You have to pick it up because, we've all been around people who are going through something and you feel every person affects the people around them. If one person's depressed at the party, you kind of feel it. Or if one person's manic, you feel anxious, whatever it is. So it's only natural that you're picking those things up. I don't know if that means anything. I don't know what I'm talking about.
No. I know exactly what you're saying. And it's interesting. And I have heard that theory before. It's not that I disagree with it as much as I feel like that puts a lot of pressure on other people. Whereas like we have to kind of take responsibility for like, I don't know, for how we behave also. Cause there's people out there whose parents were horrific.
Right.
Who were just like, somehow they ended up fine.
Yeah.
And I don't have an explanation for that either.
Yeah. I'm of this place too that I have to work on in therapy, that where I get like mad at myself. I'm like, how did I end up like there's all these people whose parents beat the shit out of them and obviously had abuse of one kind or another, or worse kind, verbal, sexual, or their parents are divorced, or, their mother died in front of them when they were 3 or whatever it is. And I'm like, well, why am I so anxious and hypochondriac and OCD when my parents were together this whole time? And you feel like sort of a guilt where I'm like, well, I had pretty good parents. But then you can go deeper and go, there's certain things I obviously didn't get or was lacking. I didn't just decide to be depressed and anxious and panic induced.
For sure. I mean, I think that's why I think it's kind of a combination, because I think it's like, it can be both. Like, I think it can be something that like, potentially there's no explanation for, that it would explain like where things are chemical. But then I think you can have good parents too who fuck you up.
Right.
Because like, I think I would say that's most of us. We have like generally not like horrific parents like you described, or like that sort of intense trauma. And maybe I'm making excuses too. Like I'm saying this out loud and I'm like, am I just like defending my
right?
But I guess like I think that it can be both. I think that's the way that I've learned how to process not protecting my parents, but at the same time having empathy for them and being like, they really did their best. They still fucked me up. I still got fucked up because they did these things. And so now I have to heal from that. And it's okay that it's like, what's my option now?
Right. Yeah. That's really what it is like, and I feel like I'm closer to that place now of like recognizing where I needed things that I didn't get and what was hurtful or painful, but they were doing their best. It wasn't like they were like, let's just make our son an anxious mess. They were dealing with their own thing. My mother had her own depression, which I'm realizing now is like my mother was very depressed growing up and anxious and insecure, painfully so, and then remained that way and had me very young. And also the thing is my parents were like 21 and 19 when they had me, and my sister's older.
Holy shit.
So, or maybe they were 19 and 17 when they had my sister, I think, and 24 and 23. Like my dad, when my dad was my age, I was like a junior in high school. My sister was 22 or something like that. So it's like, I just imagine, I did this as a joke on stage where I'm like, when I was 20, there were parents when they were 22. When I was 22, I was like shitting in a girl's shoe. And, and I'm like, I cannot imagine trying to raise a kid. And this was they're from the 70s and 80s and were raised in the 60s where like, there wasn't a thing of like, we got to really hug them and say, I love you or whatever. They were just kind of like, yeah, you're on your own. I don't know.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, like, it's kind of like we go in circles to a certain degree. Like, I'm trying to figure out like what, I mean, like, I think when were your parents born?
57 and 59. My dad was born in 57. Okay. My mother was born in 59.
Okay. Yeah. See, my parents had me later. My parents were born in 51.
Okay.
And so they had me in the 80s. and they were in their 30s. And I feel like my mom specifically had made more of an effort to try to like heal some of the shit that she dealt with. But like my dad didn't. So I feel like I got lucky in that sense.
Right.
Because my mom has always been someone who has like been seemingly receptive um to healing and like change and evolution. And like I was in therapy when I was like a child.
Right. Me
So
too.
I don't know. I don't know why I said that. But yeah,
No, I
I was
was.
also a fucked up kid.
Yeah, same. Well, one of the things that's what I was going to say about my mother's depression is that I think when you're a kid, you don't know what depression is, but you can see for me, like your mother is unhappy and anxious and afraid of everything and also depressed. And you kind of think like, hey, like, why aren't I enough? Why aren't you happy? Look at me. I'm here. You
Yeah.
have me.
Yeah.
And so that puts you in this place of sort of insecurity and I'm not enough. That like neither one of these
Yeah.
people seems very happy, even though I'm a joyful kid. And it makes you like, oh shit. I mean, this is kind of what I'm feeling
Yeah.
retroactively. Obviously, at the time, you don't have the thought to be like, oh, they're depressed. They should be happy with me. But that's somewhere
Yeah.
subconsciously in you. And also, my mother was, and I think my dad too, a terribly anxious people. So when you're a kid,
Mm.
you look to adults to protect you. And if they seem terrified, then you're going to be terrified.
Yeah. And you still protect them now. Like
Right.
you're breaking it. So you protect them even though you acknowledge they didn't protect you.
Yeah. Now we're getting into the good stuff.
Yeah. Like, so you feel like, did you feel like you had to parent your parents?
Yeah, we talk about this all the time now. I guess I probably felt that way as a kid to some degree, maybe. But my mother is always, and this is how she sort of shows love. I think my mother always looks at me as a very wise person and will look to me for advice. And my family is very chaotic outside.
Yeah.
My family, I have a big extended family. It's very, Boston Irish, drinking, 25 people always together. And I'm kind of here. And so my mother will look to me for wisdom. Like, what do you think about this? And it's sort of a reversal. Like I want to call you for advice. And mostly when I
Yeah.
call my parents, they kind of gossip about what's going on up there. Like so and so said this and so said that. I don't really know what to do. And this is happening. This is crazy. We have financial problems. And I'm kind
Yeah.
of, it feels flipped. It feels like that's how it should work in reverse. I
Like
should be
there's no
calling them.
boundaries.
Yeah. And I should be calling them going, boy, I got this thing. I don't know what to do. What do you think?
What stops you from doing that? Do you feel like you're not going to get what you need from them, or you're not going to get what you need from them?
I think sometimes I'm like, my end doesn't come up. Like we just talk about what's going on there. And I'm like, all right, well, see you later. I guess I should say, what about what I'm dealing with? And sometimes I actually do think like, well, I guess I don't want to bother them. I don't want to bother them with this.
Yeah. So you've gotten used to it in that sense of just
Yeah.
like being the support. I feel like I'm kind of the support with my mom. I took that on during my dad's alcoholism. Also, after I got sober, I think I felt really, I feel like an enormous amount of guilt for what I put her through.
Mm-hmm.
And for the fact that she like still loved me and forgave me. And I think to me, like my dad didn't not, but like held more resentment. And so I think part of me being like, well, it's okay. Now it's my time to parent you. And I think that I took that on in that sense. But my mom will call me and it'll be the same. It'll be like, but is that how what are we supposed to do as adults? When we're adults, do we just stop like relying on our parents? I don't know the rules.
Yeah. I don't know either, but I don't know I feel like every adult I talk to has issues with their parents and is frustrated. So I guess that's like the norm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I think about that sometimes in the sense that, like, I don't know. I think it's unavoidable, and it's just that's also, I think that does kind of circle back to like what we were initially talking about, which is like, so what if someone thinks some shit you did sucked?
Right.
Like, it doesn't, like, it's, yeah, you fucked up. Like, or like you affected this person negatively for whatever reason. But it's like, I feel like as when you're a parent, I mean, I don't want my mom to like walk around with the guilt of fucking me up
Right.
constantly. So it's like I have to figure out how to heal that with myself. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it does make sense. And it is hard because there's always like the counter argument of like parents. I just picture them being like, I think like I think about this all the time because therapists are always like, confront your parents or bring it up. And I think most parents would be like, what are you, insane? Like,
Yes.
I fucking changed your diapers. You had a house. You know what I mean? Like we gave you our old car, and we
Right.
took you to the doctor, and you had a roof, and I worked. I mean, I think about that.
We took
Like,
you to the doctor, all these basics. We took you to the doctor. We didn't let you die.
well, but this is what my therapist always says. Like, what are you talking about? Those are like basic things that you're looking at as like, so, and that shows my mindset, I guess. But that is, I think about like my father works a job that he hates and doesn't care about and has like a 45-minute commute to work each way and is like
Yeah.
very middle class, just makes like whatever money just to like put it all back. Like my parents have no savings whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like they can't retire. They have no like, should we retire?
Yeah.
They're like, that's not an option. And it all went to, my sister and I, having a house and whatever, and food and all that shit and health insurance, whatever it is. Of course, I didn't even went to college, so I feel like I saved them a bundle of money that way.
Yeah, you absolutely saved them a bunch of money. Good on you. Don't get your education. College is a scam.
No, do you feel that way? Did you go to college? Do you have debt?
I did go to college. I have some debt. I mean, I was more middle upper class. So I like, we were initially like lower middle class, and then my dad got a better job and my mom was working at the time, and so they saved. My mom is like, I mean, she's like a real good Jew. She just like, she's hoards money like a fucking, like, in the most like pathetically typical way that a Jew would. And so she put money away for college really fucking early on. I mean, we lived very modestly, and now I realize why. Because it's also like when my dad had cancer, we didn't go into debt. And that was when I was like, that's where the money is. I was like,
Right.
oh, we have money. It's just like going to these things. And so they always planned for college. So I have like a couple thousand in debt, but like nowhere near as much as literally every person I know. And I don't think it's a scam, but I do think it was like, I mean, I majored in music business and I'm a comedian. So it's like, what are we doing?
Right. Right. But did you have fun at least? Now, were you drinking? Because you got sober young. Were you drinking in college?
Yeah.
Did you have some fun in college? How young were you when you got sober?
I was 15.
I mean, that's unbelievable. And when did you start drinking? What is your window of drinking?
It was short. It was like 12. I started when I was like around 12, but I was like very alcoholic as a child with most things. Like I would throw tantrums about sugar in a way that was like absolutely psychotic. And I was just incredibly manipulative and like lie. Like it just, I was really obsessive and extreme. So, I mean, it was great when I figured out you could just get drunk.
Yeah.
And do drugs. I was like, fuck yeah, dude.
Right. It's amazing because I didn't start drinking until I was like almost 19. I had my first drink when I was almost 19. So I started late, but that's because I was like so afraid of being an alcoholic. Like I was consciously like, I felt that I
Why?
would be. Well, because my family was all heavy drinkers and they partied, and that was like when I grew up, like that was when people had fun. My impression still now is adults, to be an adult, to be a parent, to have a job is miserable and shitty and it sucks, except for the weekend when you're off and you drink as much as you can and you sing and get kicked out of bars, and that's fun. And I wanted to be not that. I wanted to be, I'm high on life, baby, and whatever. And I was really popular and fun and had a great time in high school. And so I was afraid to start drinking. Yeah, I was like, kind of, nobody believed. This is another thing I get mad about on like comments. People think I'm like a nerd. I was like really cool. I was like, I mean, I ran cross country and track, and I was like, I looked like this. I was like a gangly guy, but I was friends with everybody. Everybody was, I like was voted favorite senior male at one point.
That's such a weird superlative to have at a high school. That's like really honestly weird. Very bizarre.
It was really weird. And I campaigned too, so that's part of it.
Did you really?
No, but I was like, hey, I guess I did a little bit. I was like, hey guys, come on. I mean, you guys like me. But I was like the captain of
likely to be famous.
I mean, I was like captain of the horrific sports team. And I was fun. It is horrible. I mean, that anyone wants to be famous.
A curse to just put that on me.
Just seems the worst thing. I've always said, I'm like, I want the Brian Regan level of success.
Yeah, I want to hide out.
Very, very rich and successful. All my peers think I'm great, but I can walk around the streets. That seems ideal.
Yeah.
Folks, this episode of Mindful Metal Jacket, I can't even say the name of my own damn show. It's Factor. Trying to eat well is exhausting, but when you change your atmosphere, you can change your habits. With Factor, it's easier to heat up a delicious, healthy meal than it is to hit the drive-thru. Factor is America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit that delivers dietitian-approved meals right to your door. Their fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes. That's way faster than takeout. By the way, Rhonda, you want to speak to this? Because I gave you the whole box, or half a box.
Wait,
remember that food I gave you in the box?
Oh, yeah.
It was fantastic, right?
It's really good. Yeah, it's really good. The Factor? That was great. I can't believe you gave me that. That was awesome.
Well, I was hitting the road, so by the way, I've used it also, and I loved it, but I gave you some, and you absolutely loved it. Did you?
Oh, it was great. Yeah, we thought about actually using it, but it's expensive, isn't it? You shouldn't. It's too expensive. Oh, wait, there's an ad, right?
It's not expensive if you head to factormeals.com/metal50 and use metal50 to get 50% off.
I was actually being negative, but it actually worked like a commercial. I'm like, but it's too expensive. And you're like, no, it's not.
It's also not even that expensive. You're out of your mind. With over 34 meal choices a week, you'll never get bored, and you can even add on cold-pressed juices, shakes, and smoothies. Skip the grocery store. By the way, we live in New York City. The grocery store is way more expensive. It's outrageous here.
It's great.
I don't know what it's like back at your house.
I actually have a buddy who's doing it who lost a bunch of weight.
Lost a bunch of weight on it. There you go, folks. Skip the grocery store, skip spending hours chopping veggies, and skip stressing over what to make each night. Factor makes it easy to be healthy. Most importantly, it's healthy, damn it. Head to factormeals.com/metal50 and use code metal50 to get 50% off.
50% off?
Is that not insane?
Actually, I think this is really your best ad, because I think I'm literally going to do this.
Go do it. Do it today. That's code METAL50 at factormeals.com/metal50 to get 50%
50% off.
Half off. Healthy meals brought right to your door. Just boop, pop them in, 2 minutes. Get them. Ronan approves. I approve. Back to the show.
But anyway, I interrupted you. You were varsity captain.
Yeah, I just ruled in high school, but I never drank. And then it wasn't until I was like almost 19. It was like October of 2000. So I was like 18 and a half when I first drank. And of course, immediately I was like, wait a second. I was way off about this. This fucking rules. And of course, and also I was out of high school at that point. And so I didn't have, to me, like high school was so fun because you were around people all the time. I loved being around people and being funny. You had an audience basically.
Yeah. And that's so nice that you had that experience.
Yeah, I had a great time. I mean, did you not have that experience? I feel like, first of all, obviously being a teenage
woman is much harder than being a teenage male.
Yeah. I was so problematic. I mean, I think people really wanted to like me, and I think there was a degree of people that liked me, but I feel like I always pushed things too far, and I would just get the same look every time. Like I would be like the life of the party, and then it would be like, why did you just make out with everyone's boyfriend? And they're like, well, now I can't be friends with you. And I'm like, no, it's like not a big deal. No fucking nobody remembers. And they're like, no, we all remember. You don't remember.
That's how it was when I was drinking.
Yeah, exactly. Like I mean, everyone watched, it's a small town, and everyone watched me completely deteriorate because I walked into high school getting away with drinking, getting away with murder. I stole all the time. I was cool. I'd like won over the girls that had like made fun of me for years. I like lost a bunch of weight. So I was like on top. And then I got to high school and I was like in advanced classes. I got to high school, absolutely destroyed everything around me. And to the point where people were like, we don't want to be seen talking to you. Like the people that were selling me weed, the guys that were selling me weed were like, yeah, just like meet me like in the far parking lot. Cause like I just don't want people to know. Like I think you're cool, but I don't want anyone to know. And I was like, okay, whatever. I mean, I wasn't like, okay, whatever. I wanted to kill myself, but but then when I got sober, I slowly got better, but I was still pretty problematic.
Right. Now, how dramatic of a change was it? I mean, you just alluded to it when you got sober, because it's so hard for me to imagine drinking in high school and getting sober in high school. Because like, I know there's kids, I always think about this, like there's kids that were like smoking weed in high school, which blows my mind. The idea of being high in high school is just, I can't even wrap my head around it.
Oh, I mean, kids were doing heroin at my school. So like, you know, I'm from New Jersey. So it's like kids were dying from heroin overdoses all the time and nodding out in class. And I didn't do heroin, so I was fine.
Right.
That's what but I was getting fucked up too early for everybody in my age group. Like everybody around me was like still not prepared to start partying. And I was like, let's break into your parents' liquor cabinet.
Right.
And like got caught. Even after I got sober though, I was caught. I got suspended. I got detention all the time. I was caught smoking cigarettes in the bushes. I used to smoke cigarettes under my shirt during gym class. I would say that like I didn't feel well and needed to walk the track. And then when I would get to the far end, I would light a cigarette and just smoke it under my shirt.
That's hot. I mean, that's cool shit.
I thought I was very fucking cool. I was like, I'm great. I threatened people all the time. I would threaten to beat people up and yell at them and lash out. So there wasn't like a major change, but then, you know, it slowly got better.
Right. Of course. Yeah. It's so fascinating to me. I'm like, I don't know what I would have been like drinking, but once I started drinking, I was like a maniac too. I mean, I was a vandal. I just went crazy. But I had all this anger I didn't realize. I mean, like, which I still have now, which I've talked about this before on this podcast. Like I've realized only into my like mid to late 30s that a lot of my anxiety was actually anger. That was just like holding in, because when I did drink, I would be like, let's fucking smash and break everything.
Interesting.
But a lot of it, I think, was just disconnect. I didn't know how to connect to people, particularly like the opposite sex into my 20s and 30s. I just had no confidence whatsoever. I talk about that all the time. Like I look back on stuff where I'm like, oh, that person I think I could have had sex with. I just was kept being like, what? I just had no concept of like, someone was I just assumed nobody wanted anything to do with me. And then I would get really mad that no one wanted anything to do with me, but I was too like stupid or insecure really to realize.
So did you not let yourself get mad for like when you were a kid? Did you not get mad? Like, what did you do with your anger when you were like a kid through high school?
That's a good question. I don't know. No, I never really. That's a good question. It's hard for me to remember. I think I would just get emotional more or anxious. It would just manifest through anxiety, but I never was like a big like tantrum guy. I would like shut down. I have pictures. I posted on my Instagram of like being at Disney World and when I was 9, and I literally am just, I look like this. Like I'm just staring at the ground. I'll send them to you after. It's crazy. It's like shocking. I'm like, I should have been sent to like a psych ward or something. This is wild. So I would just go inward and shut down instead of snapping. And I think part of it was I was so afraid of getting in trouble or people being mad at me. That's like always been my biggest fear, is someone being disappointed with me or mad at me, which makes, show business a tough place to be.
Absolutely. So when you were a kid, were you always trying to do the right thing? Like, did you always want the best grades, to be like the best liked, but also like the best student?
I tried to be liked and always do the right thing. I always wanted, and this comes from parenting too. I always wanted the approval of older people. And I'm still like that. I still have friends that are mostly 20 years older than me. That's who I like hang out with. All my friends are way older than me, and I sort of collect like fathery figures. But
I identify.
Students, I was never a good student because I just couldn't focus or do the work. I was actually a bad student, which people are surprised by also. People think I'm like a nerd.
Well, no, it's not that I thought you were a nerd as much as like, I guess like thinking in the all or nothing sense. Like, were grades important in your family? Like, did your parents, were they disappointed in you if you got bad grades, or was it not as important? So it was like not a big deal that you weren't a good student?
No. So that's interesting. It is like an all or nothing thing, because so when I went into high school, which is where like grades first start to kind of like matter, I guess,
except they don't. It's a lie.
Of course. Yeah. It's all horseshit. But so when I was, like in high school, my sophomore year of high school, no, it was my freshman year of high school, I like failed off the track team. We had like block scheduling. So we had 4 classes per semester. We had like 4 90-minute classes. And I failed 2 of them. One of them was algebra and one was intro to computers, which I just couldn't wrap my head around. It's so bad. I know. But I couldn't I was like, I didn't get computers. I didn't know computers. I'm like an old soul. They were trying to teach us computers.
Funny.
And I'm like, what? Computer? Get out of here. I mean, I didn't have a cell phone till like 2004. I didn't have a laptop till 2009 because I was just like, what? Yeah, I know, it's crazy. I'm an old soul. But so I failed off the track team, and I remember being like, bringing my report card home and being like, I'm a failure. I'm sorry. And my mother immediately like blamed herself. She was like, we should have been paying closer attention. This is our fault. So it was weirdly bad because my therapist said, he's like, first of all, she made it about her.
Yeah,
instead of being like, why did you fail? It became her issue, and it let me off. Like I was like, oh, great, no one's mad. So what do I give a shit? Like there was no repercussions for me, and also my issue became her issue. So
yeah,
I think that's the thing with my mother, is like she thinks she's being nice and helpful, but really it's kind of self-centered.
Is it kind of like a martyrism? I don't know if martyrism is a word, but
sure it is. I mean, I always say the words are just to express ideas, and the idea you're expressing is coming through to me. So it's a word.
Interesting. Yeah, it makes total sense. Well, and just like the whole stuff with like your mom making it about her. That was like the first thing I thought when you were like, she was like, oh, it's my fault. Like that whole thing, and having to take care of her. I think at a really young age too, like that sort of a thing is damaging. Because I know.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go for it.
No, I remember like when I had a serious girlfriend too, in like 08, 09, I was like 26, 27, and we broke up, and she came from a really like well-off family, and area. And my mother immediately was like, I think this is my fault. Like, we should have dressed up nicer. It kind of made this thing of like, I think she just sees us as this, blue collar family or whatever. And I was like, no, Ma, no, it's nothing to do with that. And it's like, it wasn't until I told my therapist this that I'm like, wait, I'm in like this break. I'm like devastated and trying to make my mother feel better about who she is as a person.
Yeah.
But she's not trying to be an ass. She's just like, oh my God, this is probably my fault. So anyways,
there wasn't like space for you to be angry anyway.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Maybe you'd be a good therapist.
I mean, I've been in therapy since I was a baby. But yeah, so you had no space to be angry. Being angry was the way that I felt like was the only way I felt like I was heard.
Right.
Otherwise, I felt like nobody understood me. So, or being angry was the only way that I could get rid of all like the guilt and sensitivity and hurt and pain, like all of those feelings. So I always chose anger and destruction.
Right.
And that was the thing that made my mom, that backed my parents off. If I could get angrier than my dad, and we would go toe to toe, then I could say something. I mean, the thing is with my dad is like, I would just say things to cut him down and get him like out of my face.
So what does this look like? You're like 15 years old and just screaming at your dad. Like I'm picturing like a manager and an umpire, like screaming, like kicking dirt on each other. Is that what? Yeah. I mean, is that what it was like?
I mean, I would say shit. Yeah. Like he was like a hypocrite. And he was at work all the time and it really didn't take an interest in my life, and then would come and be like, you can't do this, blah, blah, blah. And we would start to argue and I would be like, you're just mad because you're just like your dad. And like say wild ass shit, like, and like weaponize anything that I knew. And until he got to the point where he was like, I'm done, where he would storm off. Cause that's what my dad did. He would storm off and he would just get in the car, and he hid his drinking for years. So I had no idea he was just wasted all the time.
Right.
And I just had an advantage over him because he was just like, oh, I'm just drunk. Just like, please stop talking to me.
Right. Now, you said you had anger and destruction. Did you ever vandalize things too? Did you ever go crazy and break shit?
Yeah, I broke shit all the time. There's like an incident where I got caught smoking weed and my mom grounded me. Well, there's a couple. I got suspended in 8th grade for pulling down my pants in front of the class.
What was the idea behind that? Just a fuck you, or
I was like, I thought, yeah. I mean, I was always trying to be funny, and I was like, that day, I was like, I'm wearing a bathing suit bottom, and people were like, no, you're not. And I was like, fuck you. And then my teacher was like, she liked me, and she was like, Lindsay, now I have to call the principal. And I was like, no, you don't. And I got suspended, and my mom grounded me, and I was in her car and I had my foot up on the windshield and I pushed my foot through.
Wow.
And I've like taken a baseball bat to stuff like furniture. Like she was like, tried to ground me again. I took a baseball bat to furniture. I threw shit all the time. I never hit my parents, but I did hit my sister, and I stand by that.
Now, do you just you and your sister get along now?
No.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. My sister's a different breed of person.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Older
do you get
or
along
younger?
with your sister?
Pretty well, yeah.
That's good.
But yeah, we're not, we live 250 miles apart, but we never, when we hang, it's fine.
Is she in Boston?
Yeah.
Okay. So she stayed in like the home arena.
She lives 2 streets over, like same neighborhood. She lives like a 7-minute walk. She walks to my mother's house.
Interesting. Has she had the same kind of issues with your parents that you've had to process?
She
Or do
has
you know?
she has like much more serious issues, I think, with my parents. It's much more
Interesting.
like complicated and stuff. Yeah.
And she's
Yeah.
older, you said.
She's 4 years older than me. Yeah.
So is my sister.
Oh, interesting. And is it just the two of you?
It's just the two of us. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you say you guys aren't like close, did you talk at all?
Kind of. We've gone through, and she's pissed me off like recently. So I'm just gonna say whatever, but
All right. Well, I don't want to get. This is going to live on YouTube, so I don't want to get too. I don't want to get too bad here.
no, we're just different. We're so incredibly different. We communicate so differently, and there is been like just such a lack of self-awareness on both of our sides at different times, but we see things so incredibly differently, and we were never close to begin with. So it feels like delusional to like pretend like we're besties.
Right. It's
We
hard
just don't connect.
I find it hard sometimes because, I'm like an actively sober person, and I meditate and I go to therapy. So I feel like I'm like constantly working on things, and you don't want to be like this like elitist of like, guys, I know, because I'm always working on myself, but it is hard when
Right.
you deal with people that don't do any of that.
Mhm.
You run into a lot of issues, I find, because you're like, well, I'm considering that I could be wrong. Are you doing that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it becomes really tricky when you're put so much work in on yourself, and you end up just having to work more because you can't control other people, I guess.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, my sister's in therapy now, and I want to control I want to like be like, well, what are you telling your therapist? Your
Right.
perspective. And it's like, yes, that's what we do. But I want to be like,
Right.
like, let me talk to your therapist and tell her exactly how it actually happened.
Yeah, I have that same
So,
feeling. I mean, it goes back to what we talked about earlier with, for me, like YouTube comments where you're like, no, that's not what happened.
right.
It's this is what I said. And I said it because
Right.
you said that. And it is that trying to sort of control the stuff. And I have this thought. I'm like, oh, am I trying to control things right now? And I'm like, I am. I should stop. But then there's that other party that's like, yeah, but I'm right.
Yeah.
I am
Did
right
you
about
ever,
this.
did you fight with your sister growing up? Like, did you guys ever actively like argue and fight?
Yeah, I think we did when we were kids, definitely. And I perceive my sister was actually could be quite mean to me when I was
Yeah.
young. And she doesn't, I don't think she really sees that. But yeah, it was hard. I mean, it was hard. And I was the youngest in my family. We were always with my cousins as well. And my uncle, I have an uncle who's like 4 years older than me, same age as my sister. It's a whole thing.
Interesting.
So I always felt sort of like bullied, and we would like physically fight. She would like hit me, and I wouldn't hit back because I felt like I could kill this person. And then I would get called like a pussy, and Joe's a big pussy. And that really gave me a lot of anger, because I remember thinking like I could physically annihilate this person. I mean, we were probably like 14 and 10 at the time. And I would sort of get picked on for being such a little bitch. But I was like, what am I going to do? Beat up my sister? And so I carried
that's what
that.
you're supposed to do.
I know. I guess I should have.
You should have slapped the shit out of her.
But I also, I had my whole life in every aspect, including comedy, throughout my comedy career and everything I did, athletics. I always felt that like I am mediocre, so I should be somewhere in the middle. Like I actively felt like I should monitor where I am in like academics and athletics and comedy and everything. And I'm only now 20 years into comedy being like, maybe I could be like really successful.
You are successful. You're very successful.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. But just for validation, but also I totally get what you're saying. I've always like felt like people can see that I am less than.
Right.
And so I have to make up for it. But if they do see that I'm less than, I have to destroy them so that they don't tell anybody.
Right.
So like, it's like, so if someone like catches it and is like, you know what? You have a lot of shit that's not good, or I don't think you're good. I'm like, I will ruin your life.
Right.
I will make it so you can never speak again, because that's how scared I am of not being enough, or like people finding out that I'm actually just like such a stupid, mediocre piece of shit.
Yeah, I feel that way all the time. One of my favorite quotes, Ray Romano had a quote. He said, my whole career, I've just been waiting for the comedy police to show up and be like, we're on to you. Come here. And that's how you feel. You're like, shit. Does everybody know that I'm like faking it?
Yeah, that's how I have always felt with comedy. And it's only like now for me, like a little over 10 years in, that like, I'm just like, oh, you could just try to believe in yourself. I like, I'm after a show, I act like such a freak. I have a friend who like will just be like, you're literally pathetic. Please get some confidence. Cause I'll just be like, I don't know. I feel like everybody else is like really cool on the show. And I just, it's like they know that I'm not a good joke writer. I'm not a good joke writer, right? And it's like, stop. You're so weird.
Right. But don't you find, and we'll wrap up soon. Sorry, this is going longer than normal, but I'm enjoying it. No, I'm sorry, but sorry. Also, my COVID's kicking up. This is what I feel. I feel like I swallowed dust. That's like the feeling I have where it lingers.
That makes sense.
But don't you feel like this is a thing we talk about in sobriety too, is like that, like you have this ego and you think you suck. Like I always feel like I suck and I'm not even that funny. I'm just doing the same fucking jokes from the last special and whatever. But then if somebody else is like, yeah, you suck, I'm like, what are you, insane? I fucking murder. What are you, crazy? So like, I always felt that way in relationships too. And I tried to do this as a bit years ago. Like when I'm in a relationship, not now I'm a very healthy relationship, but like I remember dating and being like, she's going to leave me. She should leave me. I'm ugly. I don't make any money. I'm a fucking idiot. She's smarter than me. She makes more money than me. But then when she's breaking up with me, I'm like, what are you, nuts? You're going to find someone better than me? Like, I love you. I go down on you. I'm a comedian. I'm so funny. You know what I mean? Like, so like if somebody said like, you suck, Lindsay, you're not funny at all. Don't you think you'd be like, yes, I am. What are you, crazy?
Yeah, absolutely. I would be like, who the fuck are you?
Right.
I'd be like, oh, really? Kiss my, I know. And that's when it goes directly to anger. And I'll be like, what the fuck? Why am I not famous? Like, you know what I mean? Like it goes directly to this like other era of just like pure delusion. And like, there's no middle ground of just like being the idea. And it's like, we talk about this in sobriety. It's like a worker among workers or whatever, like being like among, and I'm like, I've had to, the idea that I am not extraordinary or completely terrible is just maddening.
Right.
I just can't comprehend. And I don't want to be normal. I don't want to be like middle ground. Like, it's just like, it blows my mind. I'm either a piece of shit or I'm absolutely the fucking queen of the world.
Yes, exactly. Like 90% of the time, I'm like, I am an unworthy piece of shit. And the other 10% of the time, I'm like, I am better than all of you. Do you understand? It's hard. It's, both are equally unhealthy. That's why we need the middle path, as the Buddhists say.
Oh, is that what Buddhists say?
That's one thing they say. They say all kinds of
Good
stuff.
for them. Good for them.
Why am I dying? Do I have long COVID?
You don't have long COVID. You barely had COVID for what? Like a week?
I've had it for a week. Like 7 days.
Yeah, a cold will last longer. You're good to go.
That's a good point. Isn't it? Doesn't it
I'm a
freak you
doctor.
out? Doesn't it freak you out? This is what I was just saying to Sarah. Like this COVID thing, like we went into this whole thing, 2 years, this thing, it started in China and this variant started in South Africa and it's all over the world. It's all we've talked about and consumed. And right now it's in me. It's like in my brain and lungs. I'm like, that's freaky. That's really bizarre.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is. It would feel weirder to me if I didn't put so much other trash in my body on a regular basis.
Right.
Or hadn't in the past. So like, I think it was less about like a foreign body, like a mystical pandemic, or not pandemic, but disease, virus, and more just like, fuck. Like, knew I would die someday.
Right. Yeah, I'm like, it's very strange, but whatever. What can you do? I mean, I gave it to my mother-in-law, which I feel bad about, but other than that, it's fine.
Well, yeah, you're fine. You've come out unscathed.
Yeah, I think so. But unless this is long COVID and it develops into, something.
I haven't heard of anybody getting Omicron that's had long COVID. So, like, fingers crossed, knock on wood. But I think you're good. I'm going to tell you you're good because it's the power of belief.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I'm fine. Well, thanks so much for doing this. This is one of the longer episodes. I appreciate it. I've really enjoyed talking I enjoyed chatting with you always. Tell people where to find you and all the stuff.
Yeah. You can listen to my podcast called Snack Time, all about childhood snacks, food issues, everything. And you can find me on Twitter at Lindsay's Face and on Instagram at Lindsay Adams is popular.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Thanks so much for doing this. I appreciate it. I'm hoping to see you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. This is funny because also we've never met.
I know.
In person. I have all these friends that I only know via Zoom, but that's a whole other.
Bananas.
It's exciting. Anyways, thank you for having me. I'll wrap up and then we can also wrap up not on air. So that was a podcast. Thanks everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks for listening. Write nice things to us. We're sad.